This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to episode 243 of a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid-state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many, many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid-state, turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's at geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders. Today on the show, I have Christopher Judd, and he is the CTO and partner at Manifest Solutions. He's an international speaker, great speaker, Java champion, and open source evangelist and advocate in the central Ohio area. And I met Chris over at Codemash, and I don't think I've had anyone ever show me as much hospitality at a conference as Chris did. Anyway, with all that being said, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, John. And I know that you're a big fan of thanking veterans. And since this is just following the Veterans Day weekend, I do want to thank all those men and women who served in the armed forces and our first responders and everything that they do for us. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I really appreciate you. You mentioned that, bringing that up. I actually had a cousin of mine who was a couple years younger than me that he died in service about 5 years ago. So we definitely, it's always important to me to honor veterans. My dad was a veteran, and, I really appreciate that.
And I want to thank you, John, because when you first started the podcast, you reached out to me to tell me about the podcast and everything going on. And I've been a listener ever since. And I just love your podcast and how much you are willing to share about your journey and your vulnerabilities throughout the podcast. So thank you for offering this to everybody to listen to.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. So if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about how you got to where you are today in your career and what is it that you guys do over at Manifest.
Yeah, so like a lot of people, my software development journey started in middle school when I got an opportunity to learn BASIC on an Apple IIe. And a friend of mine and I really got into it. We spent all of our lunches basically writing silly little programs. And we filled up that 1.5-inch floppy and went back to the instructor and said, we need another one because we filled it up. And the instructor said, well, flip it over and use the other side. We said, well, we already did that, and we filled that side up too. And she was so surprised. She goes, nobody's ever done that with us before. So then you get into high school, and I got into sports and kind of forgot about that love of programming. And my family owned a hardware store growing up, and not computer hardware, hammers, nails, screwdrivers, that type of hardware. And so I worked in the family business, and I got an opportunity to really see behind the scenes. And we had a 45-minute drive to and from work. So I got to have a lot of great business conversations about running a hardware store and just business in general. So I decided in high school I wanted to be an entrepreneur before it was really in vogue. And most people didn't even know what an entrepreneur was during those days. So I figured, I looked at the hardware business, and my stepfather was an accountant. So I figured the best way to become an entrepreneur is to go into accounting. So I went to college getting ready to study accounting. And while I was there, I had to take a Lotus Notes class. And so that was a spreadsheet before Excel, if you're not familiar with it. And I had to do a bunch of macros, and it reminded me of how much fun I had doing BASIC. And all of my classmates were struggling with it, and it just felt like it came naturally to me. So at that point in time, I decided to double major in accounting and computer information systems. And after I got out of the accounting weed out courses, I realized, wow, I can't imagine being an accountant for the rest of my life. So I changed that focus to be CIS and made accounting and finance a minor. And I think having that business background has really helped me throughout my career in understanding and having conversations with business people. And um, even like, especially the business law classes have been really valuable to me as I did go into entrepreneurship and became an independent consultant for 13 years. I'd have to read a lot of contracts and agreements. And now being a partner and a CTO at a larger consulting company, it also is really valuable. So here at Manifest, we have about 100 consultants. We're a mid-sized consulting company out of Columbus, Ohio, and mostly around software development, IT. We also have a virtual IT group that goes out and sets up networks, wireless networks, secures them, and basically is the CTO of the company and the infrastructure, IT infrastructure of the company, setting up servers, virus scanning, things like that.
Awesome. And so when it comes to like, having that entrepreneurial, I guess, interest, do you find that to be helpful in technology? As you know, since technology is always changing, there's always that next thing. There's always advancements, especially in software. But is having that interest of kind of being an owner and being and solving problems, has that helped you?
So I would have to say, of course, a lot of what we're doing is problem solving. Sometimes we're building stuff from the ground up, from scratch. It's really helped me also having those conversations with leaders who are not into the technology, kind of having a perspective that they might have. When I was an independent consultant, I like to say I was the chief everything officer, right? I had to do all my own marketing. I had to do all my own sales. I had to be my own attorney for things that weren't really serious legal matters. And so that has really helped me transfer all that. And it also has helped me to understand, well, how do you run an organization? How do you run an event? What are all the things that have to happen behind the scenes, which I think a lot of technologists forget. They just get excited and enamored with the technology and starting something new, but they don't understand what all the pieces are that need to be involved in making something successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, I actually had my undergraduate degree was in entrepreneurship. And then while I was still at college, I got a internship, and it was supposed to be a marketing internship at a company in Fort Mill, South Carolina called UAV, which doesn't exist anymore. And after about 2 weeks, they moved me to the help desk because I was just like fixing people's PCs and things like that. And that kind of got me excited about computers and technology, and I still continue to major and graduated with my entrepreneurship degree before going back and getting a master's in computer science. But having that business insight, I think, has helped me so much when it comes to like figuring out, an MVP. What's your most valuable? I'm sorry, not most valuable, minimal viable product that you want to come out with, and understanding how that affects business and what the return on investment means. And I just having all those little pieces seem to really help me in understanding efficient development and efficient use of people's time, and how that's a resource that costs the company money. And it's one of those things you can never get back. So you have to invest it wisely.
Absolutely. I also find it's really valuable to help understand the motivation behind why they might be doing that. And then if you take that motivation, you're more easily able to direct a project in the right way, because you don't have to keep asking these questions of why, because you understand that motivation from their perspective. And so I think that can be really helpful as well.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And it helps you ask the right questions too,
And think about it. If it was your money, how would you be spending that money and applying that in the way to be successful?
Yeah, and that's one of the core principles that I have on my team when we talk about our team code is act like an owner. Pretend like you own the company, and what kind of things would you do? How would you protect the investments that are being made to make sure that it's on track with what you're interested in, to doing the right thing?
And it's funny that you bring that up, because as an executive of a consulting company, I have visibility into more than a dozen companies and how they're operating, the types of questions that they have. And just in the last couple of weeks, I've had multiple managers and owners of companies say, man, I wish my employees and the contractors I have in my house are behaving more like owners. I want them to think like an owner. So that is really the right perspective to be given to your employees. Those
Yeah,
reporting up to you.
I found that just changing that mindset, helping people change their mindset of acting like, what would you do if you owned this? Take that initiative. Don't take it as if you work for this place. Take it as if, you own it. And because you own your career, you own your job, you own the outcomes that you're creating for yourself. And if, this company is where you're going to be spending, 8 to 10 hours a day, depending on what you're doing, how do you want that time to be spent? You own this. This is part of your life. Own it. So, tell me a little bit about kind of what it's like to be the CTO of a staffing company or a consulting company, a company that works with other businesses, because your primary goal is to make sure those businesses are successful. So, what is it like to be a CTO of that?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I tell my consultants is our goal is to make that company be successful. And I like to harken back to the I can't remember BSA commercials where they said
BASF.
Yes, BSF. So our goal is not to make the products you use, but to make the products you use better. So I feel the same way. We're not making the products, we're making the companies behind the products better. So I get to wear a lot of different hats. I do go on assignment and help our clients directly. I talk to a lot of business owners and managers about their challenges and how to make it better. But I also do a lot with uplift, both on the talent that we have, but also the talent at our client sites. And we do that through training, pair programming, things like that. And one of the things we're probably most known for is our Bootcamp, which we started 10 years ago. It was originally an idea about 12 years ago when I was out on assignment at a large insurance company. And I realized, and this is while I was still independent, I realized, wow, they're struggling to find talent. The consulting company I was subcontracting through, which is Manifest Solutions, was also struggling to find talent. And I realized that everyone was fishing in the same pond. And I finally went to my now business partner, Nancy Matajasic, and I said, hey, everyone's struggling to find talent. So maybe we need to make our own talent. And then I started seeing a lot of numbers like Uncle Bob, Robert C. Martin likes to quote 50% of our industry has less than 5 years of experience. And I started looking at demand numbers like code.org says that there are 600,000 computer science jobs going unfilled a year. And we're only graduating 71,000 computer science grads. And I said, well, what can we do to make sure that when we get consultants that are early talent to make them as productive as possible? So we built a boot camp. And if you look at the current trend of boot camps, it was about 2 years before most of those started. And our goal is a little bit different than theirs. They're usually hiring people with no experience and teaching them about how to write code. So I say that they're taking them from 0 to maybe 30 miles an hour. We're focused on people who have associate's or bachelor's degrees and trying to take them from that 20 or 30 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour. And we have an 8-week program where we teach them enterprise Java or enterprise.net. And as a full stack developer, we teach them automation testing and we teach them about Agile and how to apply that in the workforce. And it's been really successful for us. And we have a lot of clients now coming to us and saying, can you do something similar to that for our employees in-house as well?
And do you guys offer that? Like, is that something you go out on site, or is it remote and train? Like if a team had developers and maybe the developers were mediocre, or maybe they're good, but they're only good in a certain skill set, but you want to expand. Maybe you want to switch from PHP to .NET or something like that. And you really want to teach them to go from waterfall to Scrum or some type of agile mindset. Is that something you guys work with?
Yes, we do. One example is a bank came to us and said, we have a group of .NET developers, but we are moving them to Java and we need to have that skill transfer. And so we took our existing bootcamp, whittled it down to the specific areas that they needed, added some content for things that we don't normally cover. And we delivered that in 2 4-week groups they split their team in half, and we did 2 weeks with one group and then 2 weeks with another group. And it was hugely successful. And they got the knowledge that they needed. They were able to implement the application and the new technology they needed. And then we also are doing that for an organization as they are migrating to AWS as well, and making sure that they have all the right knowledge and services to take their existing applications, migrate them, and then continue running them in AWS.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's one of those things that, as a business, you talk about, I remember I was at a company before in a previous employer, and we made the move from, we were straight PHP LAMP stack, setup, and moved to Java backend with .NET front end for connecting to an old AS400 as well as more modern technologies as well. And going through that process, it was just like, we just made the decision to make the change, and people had to kind of learn it on their own. And at the time, lynda.com was before it was LinkedIn Learning, is go do that. And it was such a struggle. If we had someone to come in and kind of tailor what the transition would be and train and do, like you said, a boot camp split up into multiple groups where you had, so I had one team kind of keeping the lights on and the other team learning the new technology, and then switch that would have been so much easier, I think.
And I think the advantage too is you have somebody who's out in the field actually applying the technologies. It's not a instructor who picked up the technology in order to put together a video.
Yeah.
And so they know the challenges you're going to experience, and hopefully direct you away from those and give you that bigger context to help you be successful.
Yeah. Whenever you do something like that, you mentioned that bank that was changing and becoming, or going from .NET to Java. Do you ever see are most of the developers excited to learn something new and go through a new process, or is it more like, I don't want you moving my cheese and switching things around on me?
Oh, it's a combination. I'd say the vast majority of them were really excited about it. There were a couple that weren't so excited about it, but they also knew if they didn't take advantage of this opportunity to learn new technologies, that they were going to have to reapply for another job in the organization or go somewhere else. So they were somewhat motivated.
Yeah, I imagine that would motivate you a little bit to get excited about it and to do well at it. So, which is always a good thing. So tell me a little bit about this boot camp. You started this, you said 10 years ago. So that was before a lot of them. And a lot of boot camps are kind of geared towards getting a certification. And yours seems more like it's geared to getting someone who can write good code.
Write good code, but also understand all the engineering principles.
Yeah.
So when you think about a full stack developer, and you just think about the stack, you're talking about front end, some type of back end, most likely some type of data source. The colleges do a pretty good job of preparing people for that, but they don't talk about continuous deployment and continuous integration. They don't talk about how to use Git on a large team project. They don't teach them a lot of unit testing and how do you automation test from a user perspective. So I like to tell our boot campers when they come in that we are teaching them full stack plus. They don't teach them Docker in school. They don't teach them Kubernetes in school. They don't teach them cloud. So we're trying to really round out all that area, or messaging. Those are some of other examples of things that we make sure that we cover. So they're fully prepared, and we don't know exactly what client they're going to. So I should say too, one other difference is when they join the boot camp, we are hiring them. We are paying them for 6 weeks to learn. That's their job. And then we place them afterwards at one of our clients, and we don't know what client they're going to. So we don't know if they're using Maven or Gradle, or if they're using Postgres or MySQL. So we try to make sure that they're really well-rounded, as well as that we're teaching them very transferable skills and showing how they transfer between each of the technologies so that they're better prepared when they start.
That's really good, because you see some people that just learn a specific, they don't learn the concepts behind the language or something. They just learn the language, and they don't quite, it makes it very difficult to transfer some of those things. I remember I was talking to one person who took some SQL classes, and all they took was, MS SQL, which, transactional SQL, it's not a big deal. But then when they got into a MySQL environment, they were clueless because they didn't understand the concepts behind it.
Yeah. And I find a lot of people, especially young people, think that the code is the most important thing because that's what they learned in school. And so we try to break them of that. On the first day, I have a slide that says, if code is most important, and then curly brace, fail, right? So we try to also give them some of those softer skills. They have to do a presentation at one point. We go through a discussion about web performance and how to improve the performance on a website. Then they have to go analyze a website of their choosing and then present. If you were coming to the owner, what would you tell them and how would you tell them to improve their website so that they spend money in the best way and get the best results? And so we are truly trying to make them really, really well-rounded consultants, both technically as well as soft skills.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's one of the, I try to do that at Winthrop when I'm teaching my students, is to get them to develop those things that you don't typically learn in class. It's very rare for a computer science team to have to present, and do presentations and to write proposals, or to have that kind of skill set to think about like what would make this thing better. And let me present that and sell it, sell someone on the idea of it. And I think that's a really cool skill that you're building there.
I think a lot of times in school, they're learning how to do a book report or some informational presentation. And I try to teach them through that. Is mostly what we do in business is
persuasive.
Thank you. Do a persuasive type of presentation. And so I try to get them to think about that earlier. And when you're doing just an information one, like they teach in school, they always say, know your audience. But usually that audience are your peers. And so you kind of know what they want and it's just informational. But when it's persuasive, you really do need to know your audience. You need to know what motivates them in order to really persuade them towards the direction you want. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you teach them going about figuring out who that audience is? Like, if you're selling to the other developers on a way of doing things, that's different than selling to a business owner that's going to be paying for it.
Exactly. So I tell them, I said, your goal is persuade me. I am going to be the business owner of this website. And at the end, I need to be persuaded and have a clear next step of directions to what I need to do in order to improve this on the website. And so then they present it and we critique it. I let the students critique it first, and then I give my perspective on it. And we'll go back through every slide, because a lot of times they'll put a ton of information on a slide, whether it's bullet points or they'll put a big giant screenshot of some analysis from a tool that they used. And it's hard to tell, okay, what should I be looking at? What are you trying to communicate to me with this slide? And we just do that step by step. And by the end of it, they're like, wow, I can see how this is very different than any type of presentation I've done in the past.
So that slide you're talking about, if code's most important, have you made that into a shirt yet? Because you really should.
Well, that's a great idea. I have not.
That should be a shirt you guys give out at conferences. That'll rank up there with that code shirt.
Enjoy code.
Yeah, enjoy code. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
That'd be a great one.
We actually spend the whole first day of the boot camp talking about learning and how to best learn. And we take a lot of principles from the book Pragmatic Thinking and Learning by Andy Hunt.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Because they're going to be learning for 6 weeks, so they might as well get the most out of it. And we also talk about long-term learning, so attending conferences, listening to podcasts, reading books, and they're actually required to read 3 books throughout the boot camp as well. So it's Pragmatic Programmer, it's Clean Code, and then Effective Java or the Effective.NET if it's the .NET boot camp. So that they come in, they're required to know how to program. So we put them through a coding exercise, a kata, to prove that they can code and understand the syntax of the language. So we want them to read those effective books so that they understand the idioms behind the language as well.
Yeah, it sounds like hard work. Do you have, what's the success rate of passing and getting out of the boot camp?
So we probably have 10 to 15% failure, and then the rest of them are successful. It is a grueling boot camp. So especially during the first week, we don't let them use IDEs. We have them go back to their command line, because I think if you understand their command line, you understand the IDEs better, the continuous integration tools better, how to automate things better. So we go right back down to the basics of their command line. A lot of them haven't been exposed with that. So, that first week, they're like, wow, I don't know if anyone can make it through. So we have an alumni night on the second or third night where we bring back the boot campers who have successfully gone through, and we give them an opportunity to ask questions. What was the most challenging? What do you wish you would have known? How can you be successful through the boot camp? What is it like to go to your first client? And so that's been really rewarding and valuable as well, because then they get their confidence of, yes, other people have done it. I can do it as well.
This almost sounds like the Navy SEAL Buds training or something for developers here. Do you see a lot of camaraderie within those classes, like the people that kind of finish together? And do they build like relationships and stay together as friends and coders and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. And we provide communication channels that they can keep communicating. And sometimes they go out on the same assignments together, so that helps as well. But they definitely continue to communicate. And we pair program through most of the boot camp. So, they get to know each other really well and get very close that way as well.
So tell me a little bit about your pair programming and why you guys focus on that. And I'm assuming you do that in the field as well, right?
So we try to pair program in the field, but it's really up to our clients.
Yeah.
And, I really think it's a great way of sharing knowledge. I don't know everything. I had a great assignment one time for 6 months where all I did was pair program with people to teach them test-driven development. And these were senior people. And I probably learned as much, if not more, than all of them did, because they knew keyboard shortcuts I had never seen or heard of. They maybe knew a library better than I did. So I think pair programming between any level is fantastic. And I think it's especially important when you're bringing on new talent, and especially junior talent, to pair them up with a senior person so that there is that knowledge transfer to help them be successful earlier in that transition.
Yeah, I think it's great. I've done some pair programming in the past before, and even if you're the senior person, I feel like you still learn a lot. At least I did. Because you have different perspectives that you get out of it, and it also teaches you to kind of be a mentor sometimes, and that's a skill that it's really hard to learn how to be a good mentor, in my opinion, unless you're naturally innate with that.
Well, and I know that you like to talk about empathy, and so it does help build empathy as well. And it's really hard that after you have a lot of years of experience in anything, it's hard to put yourself in the position of somebody learning something new.
Yeah.
And so that if you're working with them, you can see that better. And I think that's one of the great things I have gotten out of teaching in our boot camp, is that I am able to work with young people as they're coming through and experiencing the challenges, so I can really empathize with them, and then hopefully put it into a context that they can understand and get better. And I can apply that then to any level of talent to make sure that they can be successful.
Have you seen, or have you seen an increase or a decrease in the number of people wanting to go through this boot camp process during COVID? Has that impacted you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we usually have about 3 boot camps a year. One year we pushed it up to 5. And so during COVID, initially we postponed the boot camps because we like to do it in person. We think that's the most optimal way of learning. And so we had to postpone some of those. And then when we started with a smaller group back so that we could make sure that we social distance. And since that one, we are seeing a lot more people interested. And to give you an idea, I interview between 75 and 100 young people coming in our program a year. So, that's the type of demand that we're seeing. And then our classes, our boot camps are about 10 people, because we want to find really good people that we can invest in. And it's been challenging to find a group larger than that at this point.
Yeah, I'd imagine. It sounds like just a great opportunity for people. Are most of the folks that are doing this, have they graduated college or decided not to go to college? And if they did, I imagine they're not in computer science graduates.
No, they are computer science graduates.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah. And an associate's or a bachelor's, because they need to come in knowing how to program. Now, it's not a requirement. We have had some people go through the program that did graduate from a boot camp, a traditional boot camp, and we have had a couple of people who did not have any formal training. So probably one of our most interesting and strongest developers who went through our boot camp, while they did not go to college for it, they were working in a gas station, but they spent all their nights and weekends building interactive games in C and C++ for about 10 years. And so
Wow.
they had really good programming skills. They just didn't have the enterprise knowledge or experience. So we were able to take the skills that they had and really transfer them to what the market is demanding. And so,
awesome. I mean, that's such a great story, you know?
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic story. And he's done really well, so well that our client, who never would have hired him without the degree, after going through the boot camp about a year later, hired him away from us. So yeah, he did really well. And so I think about this a lot, and I don't think the degree is important by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think the hours you invest are important. So I've done some math on the hours, and I've talked to people who would be knowledgeable, and they confirm these numbers for me. But the typical boot camp that's about 14 weeks long is about 480 hours of working with the technology and getting experience there, where a bachelor's degree is about 680 hours. And then the associate's degree is about 680 hours. The bachelor's degree then is about 1,400 hours. And so when I interview the 75 to 100 young people a year, I see a big difference. And I think it's really about the hours invested in getting better at the craft of writing software that really separates those, not the degree itself, but having a program where they can walk you through a set of classes that have proven to be successful and give you the knowledge that you need to go on to that career is very beneficial, and hopefully in technologies that are in demand.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you talk about the hours that you put into it, it made me think of that book, Outliers by, who wrote that book? Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, we talked about, like, you know, he introduced the idea of the 10,000 hour rule and things like that. And, you know, I found for me, whenever I was the most, I guess the top of my game when it came to coding is when shortly after the iPhone first came out, and I just decided to create a game. I had kind of some downtime because my wife was pregnant. She was sleeping all the time. So I was like, well, I'm just going to write code at night and do something, you know, interesting and fun. And I just kind of fell in love with that, you know, environment and writing, you know, building iPhone apps and playing with games. And it was because I was putting in all the hours, because I would code at night, you know, for iOS, and then go to work and code .NET during the day. And just having that, you know, being able to pull, you know, Objective-C into .NET and, you know, seeing things from different perspectives and putting in the time really made me, I think, the most prolific at the time that I've been in my life. And so I agree with you. I think putting in the hours is really important. And it's amazing that you guys can put in, you know, it's 480 hours during that period of time, which is, you know, really close to an associate's degree. I'd have to say a lot of the associate's degree hours is relearning things that you may have forgotten from semester to semester.
Yeah, so the 480 hours is the traditional boot camp where you pay to go through the 14 weeks. Ours is only 6 weeks, so we don't do that. But we don't start from ground zero. We start with somebody who already has a computer science or equivalent bachelor's degree. So ours is fewer, but
Gotcha.
You brought up the point, and I think this is a very important one, is this is probably not the first time they're hearing those topics. It's probably the second, maybe the third. But I have a philosophy that especially for a really brand new topic, if I don't hear it or do it 3 times, I'm probably not going to retain it, and I'm not going to be very good at it. So hopefully the first time they heard it was during their schooling.
Yeah.
Then we're the second time. So by the time they hit their client, and that will be their third time, hopefully it's like, oh, I get it now. This makes sense. I can apply this. I feel comfortable with this technology.
Yeah. So now that you're, you know, you're teaching these boot camps from time to time, are you, do you ever find that outside of the boot camp, you talk sometimes like you're teaching? Because I know I do that sometimes. I'll be talking to someone and I'll say something, and then I'll say the same thing a different way. And my wife gets on her nerves so much. She's like, you just told me that in a different way. Do you ever have that problem, or is it just me?
I do, not to my wife, but
that's probably a good thing.
I do take the skills that I apply in the classroom and I apply it to senior developers as well. I like to break down the problem in a similar way. I think having a mind map of what problem you're solving is really helpful. So I will often draw out a diagram to help explain it to somebody at any level, and to see the whole context and the picture of the problem we're trying to solve and how it fits into everything. Because I think that will help them then learn it better as well, so that next time it happens, they'll have some skills to resolve the issue faster or not have the issue at all. So yeah, I do that.
So you mentioned like presentation. Is there any other kind of soft skills that you guys teach during those boot camp things that are important to first-time consultants?
Interviewing. So as a consultant, we interview a lot more often. So they had multiple interviews to come into our boot camp. And then instead of having an exam to exit the boot camp, they have to do another interview with me. And during that, we spend a lot of time doing interview prep and uplift. So the first time they do an interview with me, it's about a half hour. We do the same interview again, and it's somewhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours because of all the feedback I give them. And again, trying to give them the perspective of, if you were on the other side of the table interviewing, what would you want to hear? And not just to make them happy, but to actually say, what is the valuable information that you would present? What is going to present you in the best light? What is the information that they don't even know to ask you that you would provide to make sure that they know that you're the right person to help solve their problems? And so we spend a lot of time doing that. Well, I also teach them how to learn. So that's a really important skill and a soft skill. I teach them, they have to listen to a podcast as well. They have to read those 3 books. So I'm trying to encourage good habits that will teach them or prepare them to learn throughout their entire career, to be lifelong learners. And that's a big part of their goal. How to assess technology. We go over like the technology hype curve, and to think about where they're at in that process so they don't adopt things too early.
So help me with that, because I struggle with that sometimes. I'll see something new and shiny, I want to jump all over it, before I realize that I don't have a need for this.
Yeah, I mean, cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's like, we need our own cryptocurrency, and they jump on it right away. Yeah. So we talked about a lot of that hype happens. So this comes up usually because people join the boot camp and they're like, are we going to learn technology X? And so right off the bat, I tell them, we're not going to learn whatever the newest technology is, because that's going to get a lot of hype. They're going to say there's 1,000% increase of demand in that particular area. Well, of course, if you go from 0 to anything, it's a large increase. And I talk to them about, I give them a relevant example of the time, and cryptocurrency is the one I typically use right now. How often do we hear it's going to solve world hunger and it's going to make everybody prosper and all this type of stuff? And then as you go up the hype curve, you realize, oh, it's not going to solve all of our problems. And therefore people start saying, well, okay, it's not good at anything eventually. And you get into this trough of disillusionment. But then we start to find what it is good for and apply it in those right areas. So like smart contracts is probably going to be one of the most beneficial things that come out of the cryptocurrency. And we go into the slope of enlightenment and applying that technology in the right areas, in the right ways. And so what I try to teach them is, we are going to focus here in the boot camp at that spot, because I think that's what's going to make you successful in the long run, as well as that's what you need to know probably in the first 2 years of your career. And then in the evenings, look at those hype things so that when they do really take off for real, then you have the skill sets to do that. But that's not going to be the focus of the boot camp. We want to make sure that you're meeting today's needs, not just tomorrow's needs.
Yeah, that's really good. When you talk about, lifelong learning and going to conferences and things like that, do you talk any about how to network at conferences and what are some important skills that you should do to get the most out of being at those events?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of conferences and networking.
Mm-hmm.
So just recently, I spoke at my 100th conference.
Oh my gosh.
So I've been doing
Congratulations.
it for a long time. Thank you. And there's a lot of things that I apply. So one of my favorite books is called Never Eat Alone.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, there's a chapter that I love called Conference Commandos. So that tells you right off the bat that it's really not your parents' type of networking book. And in that chapter, they talk about how you can get the most out of a conference. And so one of the ideas that they have is to have a conference within a conference, because there's so many people that might be there. So you want to get a smaller group together so that you can improve the networking. And so as I watched other organizations do that, I saw that they might have a special event for VIPs so that they can present whatever their newest technology is. So one of the ways I apply this is by having at Codemash every year, I do a Craftsman dinner, and I invite a group of people, about 40 to 50 people, to one of my favorite restaurants in the area called Danny Boy's for a great Italian meal. And I ensure that I invite a wide range of people. So I'll go through the speaker list that's going to be there, and speakers that I know and I'm friends with, I'll invite them. Speakers I don't know that I want to get to know better, I'll invite them. I invite my consultants, and then I invite some of our clients as well, so that we have a really interesting group. And then I will try to go around the dinner and introduce people to everyone so that they get to know each other better. And then for my consultants to make sure that they're prepared, I tell them they're not allowed to sit with another manifest person. They have to sit with somebody they don't know. And I will give them the LinkedIn of all of the people who are going to be there, so they can think about what are they going to discuss with that person before they get there, or decide who they want to sit next to and spark up the conversation. So that's been really valuable. Speaking at a conference is great, because then people come to you as opposed to you having to go to them. And being an introvert and knowing a lot of people in IT that are introverts, approaching people can be difficult. So speaking gives an invitation for them to come to you. So that's really helpful. And then finally, I help organize conferences. So you mentioned Codemash. I've been involved since the very beginning. I think this is our 14th year. And so helping organize does a couple things. One is, I didn't expect this, and the book didn't talk about it, is I've built a really strong network with the people over the 14 years that are running it. And I feel like any one of us could ask anyone else for a favor, and everyone's willing to do it just because we know how much effort and how much we've been through together. But the other thing is, by helping organize, you know who's going to be at the event so that you can prepare to have better conversations with them, because the goal at a conference should not be to have a long, in-depth conversation. If you're a salesperson, it shouldn't be to try to get the sale there, because there's so much going on. You're really not going to have a successful outcome of that. What you really want to do is try to have a short conversation with them, and then provide some way of, can I follow up with you after the event? And that way you can have a deeper conversation and network when everything else isn't going on. And so I try to treat those conferences really special, and user groups the same way. So I've been running the Central Ohio Java users group for 20 years. And to me, that's just like a smaller conference. And one of the points in the book is, how often do you get together with so many like-minded people as you do at a conference or as a user group?
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And your Craftsman dinner, that was definitely the highlight of my trip. I thought that was amazing. And, going around, I made it a point to talk to every person in there, at least for just a minute or two, just to kind of, help me get out of my introverted self and to, make the most of the experience. And another thing that I do at conferences, well, there's two things that, just to add to that list, is I try to make sure that I never book two sessions in a row, because I want to spend one session in between talking to somebody or meeting somebody new. And I call that like the track in between the sessions. And then I always try to eat a meal with somebody different every meal. Like I don't sit at the same place. And one of the interesting things I know, Brian Prince organizes the Codemash with you. I actually met his brother sitting and eating with somebody strange, and he's not even in tech. He was just at the conference helping set things up. And I sat down with somebody, struck up a conversation. Turned out it was Brian's brother. And I think those kind of things are that just happen if you make it a point to be intentional about the networking aspect.
Yeah, I have one other trick too for those who are running user groups or events that they want sponsorships. I would often take one or two of those time slots and go to all the sponsors at the event and introduce myself and offer them an opportunity to sponsor our user group. So that's another interesting way to network as well, because those people tend to know a lot of people because they are running conferences, booths at conferences where lots of people are showing up. So that's been valuable to me as well.
That's a great tip. And I mean, I know like sometimes you see them at their booths, and if they don't have really cool gifts or good shirts, they might be a little lonely over there. So it's always good to have conversations and to network with the sponsors as well. So what have you found leading the boot camps as being kind of the most valuable thing that you get out of it?
So one of the things I talk about during the boot camp are goals for the boot camp. And the one that's probably most important to me is I want to build the IT leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah.
So in 10 years, I want to see them speaking at conferences. I want to see them, if they leave Manifest, which a lot of them do, go on to other opportunities to be managers, executives at other organizations and be successful. So we still have our very first boot camper 10 years later. And he's had so many opportunities to speak at conferences, to do training for our clients. He started an open source project, and he's really grown a ton. And he's one I point to as that goal is actually starting to come to fruition because of how successful he is and some of the peers that he had in those early boot camps as well. So that's the most exciting thing to me.
That's awesome. Well, Chris, this has been a great conversation. How can people find out more about the boot camps, the things that you guys are doing at Manifest, and connect with you and maybe meet up with you at a conference somewhere?
Great. So our website is manifestcorp.com. And so you can go there and find out more about the bootcamp, or at agilitybootcamp.com will also get you to a deep link to one of those pages. On most social media, I'm Java Judd, and I'm at a lot of conferences. So Codemash is probably be one of the biggest ones, but if you go to my personal website, juddsolutions.com, I usually have a list of what events I'm going to be coming up to next, or follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll also post there when I'm going to an event and speaking.
Awesome. And I'll link all that up in the show notes at geekleader.com. And I'm really bummed I'm going to be missing Codemash this year. Just didn't work out with the family and schedules, but I hope to see you somewhere else, and I'll definitely try to make it next year.
Yeah, I hope you do. And I hope you bring your family so you can enjoy the water park. We didn't mention that. It's at the Kalahari, great indoor water park for something to do in January. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun last year. And one thing about what stinks about my kids and the timing is our school district only gives a few days off. I think you get like 5 unexcused days per year. And we ended up using 4 of them to go to Disney this year. So oops.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time too.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely make it a priority for next year for sure. If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also don't forget to check out merch. We have some t-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.